G'day everyone, I'm Smokescreen and welcome back to another video, and here we go with some daily racing from this week, and these were the daily races. Daily race B especially was interesting because it gave me a good opportunity, because we're around Interlagos again, to select a fair few cars, or to select from a fair few cars. The Supra is a shout, in fact that was the best one of the week, but I'm actually going to choose the BMW M6 Walkenhorst. So we're going to choose a brand new car for this daily race B this week, just to see what it's like. We'll see if it develops into anything in particular. You know, I wanted to test this car out because I drove BMW in the last manufacturers series, and I loved the M4. Very, very good Group 4 car, but the Group 3 car I had chosen the Z4. And my goodness, that was an absolute disaster. But I'm just seeing if BMW is actually, you know, a valid shout for future manufacturer choices. If I can get a Group 3 car that's up to my standard, to make essentially it's going to be easy to drive and not be crap, basically. As we make a complete hash of our first rendition of Senna S. That first lap was a little bit all over the shop, but it was only a 33.1. Let's see if we can clean up this Senna S again, taking a little bit better, but maybe just braking too late and not quite taking enough curb on the inside there. We gained a good few tenths there, 6 or 7 tenths from just that one rendition there, and then by the end of turn 4 here, we're at turn 4 now. Let's see, we make this little mistake here, a little bit wide out of turn 4 there, and we just lose a little bit of time. But that lap was overall quite a big improvement, a 31.4. We're going to see if we can get a slightly better Senna S. We lose time at the entry, but we've hit the brakes earlier, and overall I think we've gained time through there. Yeah, we've gained about a tenth on the exit, over a tenth on the exit, so it just goes to show how much more important exit speed is to entry speed, because we're going to gain all the way down the Rita Riposta here, and overall have about 2 tenths up, heading into turn 4, braking just on the 100 meter board. Let's make sure we don't run wide like we did last time, and then on the exit there we don't get sucked off on the AstroTurf, and heading up towards Ferradura, we're up towards a 6/10 advantage on this lap. That lap was an improvement of about 7 tenths down to a 30.7. Let's see if we can get Senna S any better this particular time. That was a lot better, taking a slightly later apex to open up turn 2, and therefore the run out onto the straight. There's another 2 tenths gained on the exit of Senna S through Curva del Sol. That lap was a 3.5 tenth improvement down to a 30.3. Let's see how Senna S goes this time, maybe slightly wider than I would like. So we're getting a bit of a feeling for this car though, and it actually doesn't feel too bad at all. Let's have a look, because we're just slightly down. We don't get the best of Senna S's, but then heading up through turn 8, look at that, we've gained a little bit of time back there, and then as we round out turn 9, heading up the hill, we've gained about 1.5 tenths. We lost a little bit with only a slight improvement by the end of the lap. And then this lap here was a complete write-off, but this is setting up the fastest lap of the session. I entered a race and this was all the practice I did in this car before the race, so I had about 10 minutes. But let's have a look at my fastest lap in this section. Looking on the left-hand side, just on the second red canopy on the pit wall, make sure you use all this curb on the inside and try and open up turn 2 as much as possible, because it's much more important than turn 1 as it leads out onto this straight. You can see we've gained another tenth there. You can probably even short shift up to third as you just go across the second apex there. That might help the car keep a little bit more stable on the exit. Turn 4 just after the 100 meter board. Second gear for rotation. Early upshift to third on the apex and gently on the power so we don't run wide onto the grass on the exit. We're about 2 tenths up as we're heading up towards Ferradura. Turn 6, turn 7, looking just before the 50 meter board, turning in, making that first apex, hang it out wide, bring it back for the second apex and commit to the throttle, and then braking just before that specific black tyre mark crosses from outside of the track onto the curb. You can cut a lot of turn 8 as well, nice and tight for turn 9, no brakes needed when you get it right. Early upshift to second on the exit there too, braking just on the start of the curb on the right, heading up towards Bica de Pato, turn 10, and then we're going to try and exit and open up turn 11 as much as we can. I think we need a slight lift through here, even a short shift up to fourth probably would be beneficial, and then towards the final turn, or turn 12, is just before the 50 meter board. Gently on the exit, using a little bit of the curb to your advantage. Now we're just going to try and minimise the run to the line. We're about 1.25 tenths up here, keep it far over to the left as we want to minimise the distance as you head through all these little nothing turns that eventually add up to make 15 in total on the track. Up towards the line, it's going to be a 30.179. And that was the best lap of this session. I did a stream later that night as well, and I managed, on my second account, I managed to actually dip into the 29s on stream. But let's move on to the races now. I have immediately put, that time immediately puts me straight on pole position for this particular race here, and it'll be interesting to see how the BMW M6 performs in a race scenario. We've got, I think it was a Peugeot behind me. It's another quite strong car around this combination, but that race was really not too difficult at all, as we gapped the field by about 5 seconds, so better part of a second per lap, and we managed to easily win that one. This is the next race. We're in second position on this particular grid. We've popped an R4M livery on the car, so hopefully that should improve just how good we are in the race. And this race is actually really interesting because what we've got ahead is the Honda NSX. Okay, so we're going to duck straight into the slipstream off the start of this race, into the slipstream of the Honda. Make sure we get it stopped for turn 1. You're coming at turn 1 at a speed much different than you are in the qualifying time trial, so it's quite difficult to get your braking point right. But thankfully you've still got your suggested gear indicator. It will still start flashing when it reckons you need to brake, given everything including tyre wear and speed approaching the corner. So a good way to try and pick out somewhat of an okay braking point is just wait for that suggested gear number to start flashing into turn 1, and that should be a pretty good indication that you need to be jumping on the brakes. But let's have a look. We're really on the back of this Honda NSX here. We're really far on his case. Ice True, the driver, I think he's on the back foot at this particular stage. That Honda NSX is actually quite difficult to drive. It's quite a handful. MR machine, it's one of what I like to call true MRs. The MR cars that really have quite pronounced MR characteristics, and that Honda is one of them. Other ones include the Lamborghini Huracan and the Renault RS01, probably the McLaren 650S to an extent, but I don't quite hear drivers complain about how sketchy that car is compared to others. The Ferrari and the Audi would be other true MRs as well. But you have cars like the McLaren F1 and the McLaren F1 and maybe the other McLaren, the 650S, that are MRs, but they're not quite all over the place. The Porsche 911 is another one of those, not quite all over the place and quite easy to drive in the grand scheme of things. The thing about Interlagos here is we're looking to try and get our first proper dive around the outside of this Honda NSX that's putting up a very good defensive drive here, so I'm not able to hang it around the outside of turn 1 there. But what I was going to say is the interesting thing about Interlagos is there's 2 penalties being served behind, is that this track, at least at one point, was used as a Polyphony Digital balance and performance track, so the BOP circuit. The circuit in which they would try and tune all the cars to make them get the same lap time. So the good thing about that is that, in theory, every single Group 3 car should be pretty well equal in terms of overall lap pace around this particular track. That, of course, doesn't always translate into practice because different drivers, prefer different characteristics of certain cars. Some drivers prefer the handling of an MR car, some drivers prefer the straight line grunt of a power car. And so different cars will work for different people, but overall the cars still retain their specific characteristics, so the MR cars are still going to be quite difficult to handle through that middle sector. The power cars are going to be hard to try and get turned at some of these slower corners, and then over the course of a lap they should be identical, but in a racing scenario, personally, I prefer to have a car with a little bit more straight line speed, because if I've got a pure handling car that's just absolutely nowhere in a straight line here, as a Honda blocks this pass here, beautiful defense there. He defended quite late, but I think he was still trying to turn left and the car was still sort of grip limited there. I leave him over on the left-hand side, return to the racing line as late as I possibly can to try and open up my corner but compromise his, but he's got the inside. He can't fall in behind there. I'm not able to hang this car around the outside. So the BMW M6, what I'm finding, is actually quite a good car on one lap pace, but I'm struggling to sort of get over the understeery nature of it. It's quite understeery at some of these sort of fast entry corners. This particular corner was actually okay because the curb on the apex there helped pull the car around the corner, which I found nice. But Ferradura in like turn 1 especially, and the turn 12 as well, I found a little bit difficult with the understeer. But then the other thing, much like the Supra, is this car gets quite trigger happy on the throttle as well, so you've got to really manage the throttle. I drove the Supra for a good few seasons of manufacturers, so I'm quite familiar with trying to sort of make sure I don't start oversteering by pushing the throttle too hard, and this particular corner, turn 10, is the biggest culprit for that, as the car just begins to step out sideways, but I just correct it before it sort of even becomes a bit of an issue there, and I'm still within the slipstream of this Honda. I'm still not able to get past, but as we exit turn 12 there, nice and gentle on the throttle, the car just jumps sideways out onto the curb. I have to counter steer that, and I think the Honda's got a little bit of a better exit there, but of course doesn't quite have the slipstream. So we're still going to be focusing on trying to keep this Honda where we want him to be, but he's not having any of it. He's got to defend no matter what. He's defended the inside, he's returned to the outside and sort of left me hung out to dry. He's done a late turn in to try and defend from an outside sweep around from myself, and that is another spectacularly defended move by Icetru there. He's putting up a very good fight here. We've got 2 laps to go as well. He's got straight defensive down the Rita Reposta, 2 wheels on the grass. That's not going to do his straight line momentum any good, and he slightly compromises his run into this left-hander here, potentially opens up the possibility of a cutback on the exit, but it's not quite going to come off as I can't get the momentum out of the corner with this slightly oversteery nature of this BMW M6. He covers the inside of Ferradura. I return to the outside, hoping he runs deep and I can get underneath him on the exit. I get a bit of a run on him on the exit, but I'm not close enough to translate that run into an overlap up the inside of the following turn. So we just have to fall in single file once again, heading through this twisty handling sector where I'm going to struggle a little bit with the slight disadvantage of the dirty air coming off the back of the Honda. This is where the Honda should shine. We get a good exit out of turn 10 actually, and we've opened up this left-hander of turn 11 quite beautifully actually. We've remained close throughout that corner. He's slightly defensive into turn 12. That might compromise his exit there, and it has. I think this is the closest we've ever been, and he's straight back over to the left-hand side. Gives me no chance to get an overlap up the inside heading up towards turn 1, so we're just going to bump him a couple of times and just, you know, be tactic with how long it takes for us to actually try and get an overlap. What I wasn't thinking of at the time is trying to do him the dummy, which sort of move over to the right, get them to open up the inside and then dart to the inside at the last second. I didn't think of that at the time, and perhaps that would have been a good way to try and make that position up. That particular defense wasn't as clean as the other ones. He's just sort of bumped me to the outside, a little bit closer to the right hand side of the outside of turn 1, a little bit more than his previous attempt, so he's beginning to get, you know, a little bit all over the shop, just trying every trick in the book to try and keep this first position that we've been fighting this whole race for, and we're still not able to get past him. He's defensive up into turn 6 once again. The last chance I have at trying to get a move is slipstreaming down the straight. I have to be very close, and in fact, unless he really makes a mistake on the exit of turn 12, it's actually going to be quite difficult to get the overlap, a complete overlap, and get ahead of him before the finish line here. So at this particular stage here, he's not quite opening up this right-hander as much as he could have. He gets a loader oversteer on the apex of the corner. I catch right up to the back of him here. This is a really crucial part as I get a little bit of oversteering, get a little bit unsettled on the curb. He's able to take a full racing line for the final turn. He slides slightly wide there, but I oversteer on the exit, and it still might not be enough. We're about 2.5 tenths behind him at this particular stage. He starts a little bit of a weave. I don't really have an issue with the weaving to try and break the slipstream, because I would do it too. Down to the inside, I follow him and he moves back to the outside, back to the inside, and I'm not able to try and make the most of that slipstream there, and by the end he's going to keep that position by a little more than half a tenth of a second for second place there. Good drive by Icetru there, and we get a clean race and a second position to reward us for that particular drive there. We're going to move on to the next race because I wasn't done. We've got different rivals in this particular one. We've got ABC Racing behind and another driver in third, but it's really ABC Racing that's going to be our main rival for this particular race here, driving the Peugeot RCZ. He's quite close coming out of Curva del Sol there. Normally I'd like to try and sort of begin to edge towards breaking the slipstream by the time we get through Center S the first time, because what I was trying to do is absolutely nail my turn 1 braking point on lap 1 and try and gap the rest of the field who perhaps haven't quite optimised their braking point for turn 1, so they probably either brake too early or brake too late. But that didn't really work, because ABC Racing must have got a pretty good turn 1 and turn 2 and 3 as me as well. We actually gain a load of time heading through that corner. The gap opens up to about half a second, which remains the case until lap 2 here. We gain a little bit through turn 1. We don't quite cut turn 2 as much as I know that we can. We get oversteer at turn 3 as well. So that gap to ABC Racing is just going to be closing down even more, 3.5 tenths down the Rita Aposta, so kind of a similar situation to the previous lap, and it'll be interesting to see how long it takes for him to actually get past. Coming into turn 4 now, the car just jumps sideways, I have to counter steer, and it just pushes me over the edge of the track, and look at that, I've lost that position to ABC Racing, who's able to keep a much cleaner racing line through Descida do Lago turns 4 and 5. So now it's roles reversed. Roles reversed in terms of this race, but deja vu in terms of the previous race. I'm on the attack again. The gap to Maydai in third is just over a second, although it's just gone under a second. Now back over a second. Oh my goodness, it's changing so much. But the most important point regarding the gap behind us is not within the slipstream range. So I've still got, a little bit of breathing room. I don't have to quite make sure, and I don't have to quite defend from the guy behind it. I don't have to worry about that just yet until he gets into the slipstream. At least a load of oversteer for the Peugeot on the exit there. He gets a really poor exit out of the final turn, or turn 12 at least. I think there's still 3 turns to follow, even though they're all flat out, and a really good slipstreaming opportunity. He defends to the inside, which he's fully entitled to do, even though he has made a mistake, but it's just merely made his run down the straight pretty poor to the point where I'm able to get an overlap, and I'm actually in the lead at one point here. I hang it around the outside of turn 1, slight bit of contact on turn 2. We leave each other just enough space so that we don't run each other off the road and earn each other a penalty. The driver behind, because we've gone side by side through these couple of corners here, is now firmly within slipstream range. I push him to the inside of the track because we're running side by side into here. I'm not going to be quite able to get it around the outside there. We receive a slight tap from Maydai behind, who just was looking to get up the inside of me, as I didn't quite take a full optimised racing line because I was battling the Peugeot. But now it's a 3-way fight for first, which means my chances of picking up first position have just dropped by a factor of 3, or a factor of 1 extra. So we're still trying to get past this Peugeot. It's all good though. I'm not quite familiar with all the strengths and weaknesses of this M6, but it appeared to be a decent car in a straight line. Maybe not quite as good as the Supra, but I think it would probably be on par with the Peugeot, which by the way is another MR car I believe, but not one of the true MRs that are really difficult to handle. But the the Peugeot is a really good car around this track. It's a very solid shout, and pretty much what I would call, what everyone would call, an alternative to the Supra, which is the meta car for this combination. But yeah, obviously the M6, not quite the Supra, handles a little bit differently, but is similar in some ways. But as for this particular race now, heading down in towards turn 1, we're in the slipstream of the Peugeot. I'm going to look to the inside to try and force him into an error. That wasn't really a move to show that I am going for a move. It was more a movement just to try and cast his attention behind me, as he's actually made a bit of a mess of turn 3. And let's see, he's run off the track and earned himself a half-second penalty there. So I think I've kind of achieved what I wanted to achieve. I wanted to make a last-minute movement right before the braking zone, just to pull his attention away from his braking point, and maybe just pull the attention away from the driving as it gets a little bit awkward at turn 4 there. I think at the time I thought I was alongside enough and that he turned across me, but just looking at this now, I don't quite think I was quite there enough, so much so that he required to give me space, which he didn't. But yeah, look, he ended up getting a penalty, and I think I wanted to also capitalise on the dirty tyres that he may have had as well. Fast forwarding towards turn 12, that gap has opened up, and as we exit turn 12 out onto the longest straight here at Interlagos, that gap's opened up to about 9.5 tenths. So ABC Racing has also got to serve that penalty, so by the end of that race, the gap had opened up to just over 2 seconds, and we managed to bring it home with another victory and another clean race, as well as the fastest lap in the pole position, a 3-star result. Following race, similar story, pole position, fastest lap, clean race, another 3-star result. But this is the last race of the video. Off pole position again, Cedar's Proud GT behind. He's going to be our main rival for this particular race. Now, in the last one that I showed, like the 2 seconds of me just crossing the line and winning, I was actually just ahead of Cedar's Proud, but only a couple of seconds ahead of him. So he's got another opportunity to perhaps learn something from the previous race. He's had maybe a good 10-minute break between the 2 races. He perhaps could have gone and looked at the replay to see how I was driving. But it seems in this race now, he's kind of improved on his performance from last race, and we'll see what my first lap was, just to see if I've fallen off the pace by any stretch of the imagination. But the interesting thing about Cedar's Proud is that he's actually driving the Supra, the strongest car for this combination. As we head up towards the line, it's a 34.9. That's not too bad of a first lap coming off pole position. Seat is proud, sends it down the inside actually, really late move, slight bit of contact on the way through, and you know, maybe not the cleanest move out there, but you know, I'm not that angry about it. He definitely wasn't alongside when we jumped on the brakes. I think he broke a little bit too late. But nevertheless, up the inside, I kind of saw him in time so that we didn't make significant contact. He brakes quite early coming in towards turn 4 now, so I just have to let off the throttle and let him recover himself and just you know, not go past. There's the hazards flashing to say sorry. I was actually just checking to see if the front hazard lights were actually even visible in this car, because sometimes they're actually not. But in this car, I think they are, but you know, it also relies on Seat is proud looking behind. You know how much I love a bit of indicator action. But anyway, he's driving the Supra. That's the meta car for this combo. The Supra's really good at high-speed cornering. It's really fast in a straight line. There's no tyre wear to worry about. You short shift the Supra as well to try and get more power out of it, because the power band at the Supra is a little bit lower down than it is in the BMW. So you're not revving the engine as high, which can kind of help with a bit of a psychological factor. If you're revving your engine really high, you can kind of work yourself up with the very high-pitched and loud engine sound. Whereas if you're short shifting, the engine sounds a bit calmer, it's a bit lower, it's a bit quieter. It can help you remain calm because you kind of, for some reason, the calm sounding car can translate to how you drive. It can keep you calm if your engine sounds calm. It's a bit of a weird dynamic, but I have experienced it, and it sounds really strange, but it is a thing. Seat is proud runs quite deep into turn 1 there. I was in the slipstream all the way and down the straight, but it was difficult to try and make inroads into Seat is proud just because of how strong that Toyota Supra is. So that's my old car. The Toyota Supra was my old manufacturer's car, and that's sort of what I liked about it. Good straight line speed, fairly good cornering. The short shift was kind of helpful because it helped keep me calm, and he gets a poor run through turn 4 now, so we're definitely a lot closer than we were as we're heading down the straight here. If we can remain about this close heading down the straight, we're going to look around the outside of Ferradura, but it's not quite able to be done. ABC Racing is also back in the picture. Look at that, we've almost got the overlap on the exit of turn 7. I think we've given him a slight bump there and just pushed him into the next corner a little bit, but he recovers back into first position as we head through turn 9 up towards turn 10 now. He's going to go defensive into turn 10. I'm going to look around the outside here. Let's see, I think he gets bumped on the curb and I just received a little bit of a bump there. I wouldn't really call that his fault at all because I've still got overlap here. I'm on the inside of turn 11, which is an awkward spot to be if you're the car on the outside, and we dive up the inside at turn 12, and ABC Racing follows me through, albeit with a bit of contact, but what that's done for me is opened up the gap to the cars behind, especially Seat is proud, and ABC Racing is not driving a Toyota, he's driving a Peugeot, which isn't quite as good in a straight line, so it gives me a little bit of breathing space. I don't have to worry about Seat is proud just re-overtaking me with the strong straight line speed of the Supra, because there's now a little bit of a slower car in a straight line in between us. Look down on the radar, Seat is proud straight up the inside, and I think ABC Racing just got the overlap again, so they're squabbling behind now, and that one little exchange they had at Centre S just then has opened that gap up to about 9.5 tenths, and by the end of the race it was 1.9.5 tenths, and we go across the line setting the fastest lap of the race of a 30.409, and that's another beautiful, sensational win. Lovely. Well, that's it. That's all the racing I did in Daily Race B that week. I really wanted to test out the BMW M6. Now, I know there was no tyre wear, there was no fuel use there, but what are my thoughts on the M6? I think it's actually quite a solid car, to be honest. And, you know, it's made its way to World Finals, not by me, but by other drivers, so I know the potential is there. It seems okay in a straight line. The throttle application seems a little bit more aggressive than some other cars, but it's kind of similar to how the Supra drives, so it's not something I'm not used to. A little bit extra understeery, but I don't think that's a really huge issue. It's only at certain corners, and I'm sure you can have a nice calm driving style and try and drive around that. But I'm yet to see how it performs with tyre wear, yet to see how it performs with fuel. But let's keep an eye on this M6, because I think it could potentially be quite a decent shout to be a Group 3 counterpart to the M4 in manufacturers. I also am developing to be somewhat of a BMW fan myself. I find all their older cars particularly beautiful. But anyway, that's going to round out this video today, so do hit the like button if you enjoyed, and do subscribe if you'd like to see more videos and streams from me. Do leave a comment as well. Questions, comments, and constructive criticism, as always, very much appreciated. But that's at the end of this one today, and that means that is it from me. So once again, I do thank you very much for watching. See you later.